a new facility like this. It has labored for decades with facilities, frankly, that are antiquated, out of date, and it still produced marvelous people.
I see when this building is complete that we'll have the facilities that will attract even stronger faculty, that will be able to attract outstanding students. The Center for Science, Business, and Religion could be compared to shaking up a soda bottle and then the cap explodes. And what explodes is the additional opportunities for growth of this college that we can't even imagine today.
I believe, as does my wife, that we're paying ahead and we're paying for the next generation and the generations to come. And we decided that's a good thing to do, and this is a good place to do it for.
This CSBR campaign is so important because it's about saying we are going to make a difference, and it is about believing in ourselves. This is showing it to the world.
You've got to see it in your mind first. You've got to visualize it.
It's just obvious that if you don't believe something, you can't see it.
The ability to see something larger and greater, even that's not so obvious, is a very powerful force.
There are more and more people that believe that Augsburg is a unique college. We're not trying to be like anybody else. We're trying to be uniquely Augsburg. That small college with committed faculty, diverse population, focused on building leaders for tomorrow's world. Small to its students, but big to the world.
This is my solenoid, which will have the magnetic stimulation going on. What I call it my baby, but yeah, this took. So I'm Kim Karlsen, and I will be a chemistry major and a physics and math double minor. As you can see, there's LED lights that are wrapped around in there, which is like the exact same. I'm trying to stimulate algae using electromagnetic fields. Basically, I have a big magnet out there. It's a solenoid. You get a really strong magnetic field within the solenoid. I'm pumping my algae through it. They're stirring in there, so they're like, uniformly dispersed within there. And so basically I'm gonna see if that makes them grow faster. And I have stir bars. I keep it stirring. So that, the physics part of it was like, kind of fun, easy, whatever. I was able to get the magnetic fields that I wanted with my solenoid, which is really exciting. Then with the algae, it's been like, let down after let down. Because they'll die randomly, and you have to figure out why they died and start all over again. And so it's been like kind of depressing, but right now things are going really good. But it took a long time to get to a point where they're actually, I had to like get to know them. Now I know the algae, and it's like already time has run out. So.
Somebody's name from some location.
Standing by. All right. We're on standby.
Standby. Thank you, Katie Reddy, for... You want to do the definition question or the what does it mean to you part?
That's just the a good one. And just straight to Paul Pribbenow. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of Augsburg College, Paul Pribbenow.
Good morning and welcome to Scholarship Weekend at Augsburg College, and happy Valentine's Day to you all. My name is Paul Pribbenow and I'm the president of Augsburg College. It's my distinct privilege to welcome you to this extraordinary event. Today is the second day of Scholarship Weekend here at Augsburg. Scholarship Weekend is an annual event where bright students from around the country visit campus to compete for our top scholarships. Yesterday and this morning, they met with their future classmates and professors, explored labs and classrooms, and got a brief taste of life as an Augie. This morning, they're getting a front row seat right here to see one of the world's most entertaining speakers. For those of you who have never visited campus, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Take a quick, good look at campus because it's about to change. In 2016, thanks to a remarkable gift of $10 million, which we announced just a couple of weeks ago, we will begin construction on the Center for Science, Business, and Religion, a building we believe will truly transform this campus. Over the years of planning for this building, many have questioned this combination of disciplines, science, business, and religion. But at Augsburg, we have a long history of looking at knowledge from broader and more inclusive viewpoints. Our faculty have long collaborated at the intersections of disciplinary perspectives. Indeed, our Lutheran heritage holds up and values paradox. We commonly situate our thinking in spaces that create productive tension and generative possibility, such as exist between science and religion or between religion and business. The cellist Yo-Yo Ma has called these spaces necessary edges because they drive not only innovation and creativity at the margins, but also deeper knowledge at the center or core of an established discipline. For years, Bill Nye has used scientific experiments to teach us to think deeply about the world around us, the soil beneath our feet, and the sky above us. And Augsburg education is all about seeing deeply, seeing connections, considering multiple perspectives, engaging one's whole brain to understand the world. We teach students to think deeply, and we foster their capacity to bring multiple perspectives to bear on complex problems. The young people in this room, both current students and prospective ones, are here because they believe that science can save the world, and that through scientific experiment and experiential education, they themselves can help save the world. Look around you. Is there a future winner of the Nobel Prize in physics or chemistry or peace in your aisle? I believe there is. I want to extend a special thanks to all of our corporate sponsors, Beckman Coulter, Lerner Publishing, and Microsoft, for making it possible for more than 700 high school students with an interest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM fields, to visit our campus and hear Bill Nye speak. What an incredible opportunity you've given these young people. Thank you for choosing to partner with us today. Following Mr. Nye's speech, he will be happy to answer a series of questions from the audience. On your seat, you will find a note card. Please write your question clearly and pass your note card to the end of the aisle so an usher can collect it. Copies of Bill's newest book, Undeniable: Evolution and the Science of Creation, are available for sale in the lobby. To introduce our distinguished guest, I want to invite to the stage now Michelle Graffelman, a young woman, a young person, I believe, who will change the world. Michelle is a current Augsburg student, a senior, majoring in biology, minoring in mathematics, and carrying, of course, a 4.0 GPA. For the past 2 years, Michelle has worked with Augsburg's Dr. Matt Beckman in the Daphnia Genetics and Development Lab, and in November, she was invited to present her findings at the National Neuroscience Conference in Washington, D.C. Last summer, she held the Vans Fellowship in Biomedical Ethics at Mayo Clinic, and after graduating from Augsburg, Michelle plans to attend medical school. On behalf of the faculty, students, and staff of Augsburg College, thank you again for joining us this morning, and now please welcome Michelle Graffelman.
Thank you very much, President Pribbenow. And thank you to all of you for being here. Like many of you, I can recall watching Bill Nye's videos during elementary and middle school and thinking how intriguing his experiments were. I remember feeling a strong sense of wonder and awe. Yet, as a little kid, those experiments always seemed so out of reach to me. I couldn't imagine ever being able to do the experiments that he was doing. They were too complicated or used equipment that I, in my elementary school classroom, didn't have. Things like test tubes and Bunsen burners. Okay, maybe not that complicated. But how about sub-zero freezers and exploding chemicals? However, since enrolling at Augsburg, I've learned that anything is possible. For the past 2 years, along with my biology professor, Dr. Matt Beckman, I've been studying the hedgehog gene in water fleas and its role in eye development. Doing research has not only helped me to better understand many aspects of biology, it's also shown me what it's like to be a real scientist, doing real experiments with all that fancy equipment that I had never seen before. It's great to look back now and think about those experiments I watched Bill Nye do, and realize I've revisited many of those topics as a college student, and I've actually tried some of those same experiments. What used to be so amazing and unattainable is now a reality, and it still fascinates me. It is truly a privilege for me to introduce Bill Nye. Known to most of us as Bill Nye the Science Guy, he began his career as an engineer, graduating from Cornell University and working at Boeing on the 747. While working at Boeing, Bill won the Steve Martin Lookalike Contest in Seattle, which led to him performing as a stand-up comedian. He began submitting jokes to Seattle's own comedy show, Almost Live, and it was there that Bill came up with the Science Guy character, realizing that he wanted to create a kids' show about science. Just 11 years later, the show had won 18 Emmy Awards. Bill has since received many other awards, including honorary doctorates from 6 different universities. Today, Bill travels around the globe, challenging audiences to change the world. He also holds a day job as the CEO of the Planetary Society, the world's largest non-governmental space interest organization. Bill is the author of many books, including 6 children's books, and his most recently published work, Undeniable: Evolution and the Science of Creation. Bill Nye is here today to remind us that science can change the world. Thank you, Bill Nye, for creating in me such a strong sense of wonder and curiosity about science and research. You have led me and countless others to appreciate the passion, beauty, and joy that is the PB&J of science. Please give a warm Augsburg welcome to Bill Nye.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Woo! Science rules. Woo!
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Inertia is a property of matter.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
T minus 7 seconds.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Woo! Greetings, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages. It's so good to see you today, this Valentine's Day. I was really excited about this, about coming to be with the Augies, until just a couple minutes ago. Somebody came up to me and said, "Is Bill Nye your real name?" I said, "Well, it's William Nye." Well, why did you change it? Well, oh man, this is gonna be be here for a while. No, great. It's great to see you all. Thank you. Congratulations to the scholarship people. I know you're out here. Future Augies, yes. And some past Augies spoke this morning. And past Augies, whoop, yes. Anyway, I just want to point out that the reason you're all here is because of the passion. The passion for science, the passion for exploration. The passion to know what's beyond the next horizon. And that starts when you're really young, and it sticks with you your whole life. Those of you may be familiar with this picture. It's Earthrise over the moon. It was taken in 1968 by an astronaut named Bill Anders on the 24th of December, the eve of Isaac Newton's birthday. Some other stuff, I guess. And it changed the world because people had never seen the Earth with this never seen the Earth in this perspective. And if you showed it to my grandfather, he wouldn't have thought it was real because there'd be too many clouds. You know, his perception, and not unreasonably, of the Earth was like a classroom globe with no clouds at all. So people began to appreciate, in my opinion, what it's all about. What the weather systems on the Earth are all about, and the reason there are storms and rain and how we all make a living. So for me, it started with my grandfather's son, whom many people call my father. And this is a picture of my dad. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I know you don't get out much. He's carrying a rock hammer, and he's a rock. I mean, just, I know there's a lot of theology here and such. If you don't get out. He was quite the rock hound, and he rock hounded amateur. Any geologists here? Anybody? Woo! Yeah. No, that's all it takes. And you'll recognize him or her, I can't tell from here, because they walk around like this. And very excited when they find another rock. And they, wow, you know, look, this one's different. Really. Every rock tells a story. Okay, Dad. And if you go to their house, their dorm room or whatever, there's just rocks. And then there's one more rock, you know, quite often. Anyway, my father was quite a charmer. He was really, to me, a fascinating guy. And he had a lot of ideas. And one of, I think, his best ideas was to marry this woman. I know, she's kind of hot. I know. Yeah, I know. She was cute. Excuse me. She's cute. Now, for those of you, those detectives in the audience, I hope you can infer that my father went to Johns Hopkins University. And if you go to the bookstore there, they haven't changed anything. The font is the same. Like, they haven't even changed the T-shirt in all these years. Anyway, my mother's father would not let them get married until she was graduated from college. Right on. That was a long time ago. That's how he rolled. So my father was under pressure apparently to go to law school, but this may surprise many of you. For some reason, he didn't want to go to law school. I think he thought it'd be kind of a drag. So through some family connection with this and that, he wanted to earn some money. He took a job on Wake Island. And if those of you who've never heard of Wake Island, you go to Hawaii and then you go about that far again, another 5,000 nautical miles. It's in the Pacific Ocean nowhere. And if you're not careful, you'll miss, and then no one will ever hear of you again. And in those days, Wake Island was an atoll. Well, I guess it still is, for crying out loud. It's an atoll, coral reef kind of thing, and there's no place to land a plane. So the planes that came and went there were seaplanes. And the deal that my dad got involved in, he was part of a construction crew building a runway on Wake Island. And if you were a business person in 1940, you flew from San Francisco to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, and then from Pearl to Wake. And then from Wake on to sometimes Midway, which is Midway. or Shanghai in China. And that was how it was a long trip, and it was a big adventure. But Wake is tactically very important. Wake Island's tactically very important because it's where you can land a plane in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And my father was the college kid, so he was the quartermaster. He was, I guess, did accounting and kept books for this construction crew, and he apparently was responsible for keeping track of the gasoline that went in the Pan Am. If you ever see the movie 2001, Pan American Airways used to be a big deal. And that's apparently, may or may not be my dad, working there on Wake Island. And so it was great. They were making money. There was no place to spend it. And no, there wasn't. It's like, if you guys know anybody who's gone to Alaska fishing, it was that kind of thing. You make a lot of money in a short, that was the goal, make a lot of money in a short amount of time. And no place to, or hardly any place to spend it. And there are no women, which I think was kind of a drag, but my dad said it was the greatest thing ever. They would watch movies every night. It would rain. They wouldn't go inside because the rain was so warm. It was the tropics. This was fabulous. And that was all cool in the summer of 1941. That was good. But then my dad decided to stick around. They weren't finished doing the job yet. It was going back to the States. It was kind of a hassle. You had to wait. And there was concern about the Japanese military, but it was like, nobody's going to attack the Pacific Ocean. Come on. That's ridiculous. There's no such thing as climate change. Come on, that's crazy. But for those of you unfamiliar, on December 8th on Pearl Harbor, because of the international date line, was December 7th. I mean, on Wake Island, it was December 8th. On Pearl, it was December 7th. The world ended. The U.S. was attacked in Pearl Harbor, which was not yet a state, but nevertheless was a very important part of the U.S. influence, especially the Navy. And Wake Island was attacked the same morning, and it was a mess. I mean, my mom said it was as though the United States was changed forever, and it was a desperate, terrible situation. And I know the grown-ups will tell you, students, back in my day, you know, we took the Christmas holidays very seriously. Now, these kids today, it's all commercial, it's nothing, no. But back in my day, okay, let me just show you. 1941, world has ended, and 14 shopping days till Christmas. Okay. I mean, they're war bonds, but it's in the same, just understand. It's below the fold, like, it's not that new an idea. Anyway. Understand that these guys just disappeared. So on Wake Island, they fought back for 2 weeks. They shot down Japanese aircraft for 2 weeks. They sank a couple Japanese small ships, and then eventually the Japanese just showed up with a flotilla and captured everybody and took most of the guys to the mainland of China. And there was no communication. There was no radio. There was no way. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. Yeah, what did they do all day? Yeah, I don't know. Where did they have time? Yeah. So these guys were just gone, and people were, if I may, like totally freaked. Now, through the dumb luck of the universe, my mom went to Goucher College. Now, those of you who've never heard of Goucher College, it's still in Maryland, but it used to be in the city of Baltimore, and back when we had such things, it was the sister school to Johns Hopkins. Men went to Hopkins, women went to Goucher. And the dean of students, dean of women at Goucher, was Dorothy Stimson. And she happened to be the first cousin of Henry Stimson, who happened to be the Secretary of War. For those of you who've never heard this term, we used to call it the Department of War, because that's what the business they're in. Now we call it defense. We're defending, yeah. Okay. I just wonder, you guys, I don't know the answer, seriously. Things would be different, but how would they be different if we changed the name back to the Department of War? I wonder, you know. Would we be defending our oil on the other side of the world? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe, seriously, I don't know. But it's something to think about. Anyway, Henry Stimson apparently said to Dorothy Stimson, do you have some women that can come work on this thing? I can't tell you what it is. So my mom and 11 other gals were recruited to work on the Enigma Code, which is this notorious, infamous, famous Nazi code. It started out as a machine to encrypt bank transactions, the same way you got to put your password into your bank account online. And it was a very sophisticated code. There's a movie out now, you may have seen it, The Imitation Game, featuring Benedict Cumberbatch, very good-looking young man. And it's about the British effort to crack this code, which they were successful because of this famous guy, Alan Turing, who every computer you use today, your phone, electronic watches sort of depend on discoveries that innovations Alan Turing came up with. Anyway, just the US was involved in decoding the Enigma as well. And so this is a picture of my mom and her colleague. She was recruited, and I remember very well as a kid, people of that age, the way they would interact. You know, what did you do during the war, Jackie? I can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. She didn't talk about it. They were declassified, you guys. She was recruited in the spring of 1942. They were declassified in 1992, 50 freaking years later. And she still, they wouldn't talk about it. They had a big party, that big thing, wouldn't talk about it. And no, they wouldn't. They were just so into keeping secrets. It was really a remarkable time. And everybody was in on it. This is to say, everybody in the United States was working on this so-called war effort. Now, I met many of my mom's colleagues over the years. Her captain remained a family friend. And I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm not a bad person. It's Valentine's Day, okay? Cut me some slack. But really, who has the best legs? I'm just saying. I'm not a bad person. I mean, just objectively, I think my mom had the gams. I'm just saying. And I imagine images like this stuck with my father. And if any of you get a chance to spend 44 months in prisoner of war camp, I would not do it. Don't do it. Sounds like kind of sucked. It's kind of a drag. But he lived through it. Maybe thinking about my mom. He lived through it, and the Japanese military confiscated all their jewelry, all their watches and everything. And my dad became apparently fascinated with sundials while he was a prisoner of war. So he invented the sand dial, which you can take to the beach so you don't have to get sand in your watch. Get it? Sand dial? Huh? Dad, that's brilliant. Oh my God. We're going to make dozens of dollars on this. This is fantastic. And then he wrote articles for the Evening Star newspaper, which was a newspaper in Washington, D.C. at the time. But it was when he wrote his book, Sundials of Maryland and Virginia. That's when, yes, my friends, he was given a lifetime membership in the North American Sundial Society. Any members, any NASS people here? Yes. I mean, any accountants here? Any accounting majors? Yes. You know how they party. You've been with the accountants. They're footing columns with their calculator, writing Excel macros. You know, it's crazy. Let me tell you, when you are with the sundial people, it is off the hook, man. It is. Bunch of people just. It's moving. Look, the shadow. It's moving. Look. And if you look at these guys, who are my friends, if you look at these guys, it's a cloudy day. Okay, there's not even a freaking shadow. Dad, really? So I have the manuscript from my father's book, and this page, I think, just kind of encapsulates it. And should the reader ever find himself looking for sundials in the snow, the author would like to meet him. Dad, it's covered with snow. You can't read, Dad. Really, you can wear a watch, you know, like. In other words, if you're as kooky for sundials as I am, you know, we should hang out, sure. Before people could meet on Facebook. But you notice he typed it, like with a typewriter. Those were the days. And I thought that I had not been affected by this. I was a rebellious teenager. This is a complete waste of time. Who cares about sundials? We got to move on, for crying out loud. A couple years ago, I grew up in Washington, in the city of Washington. What you do if you live there, you go to Delaware. It's just like the Jersey Shore. It is, but it's in Delaware. It's not even 50 nautical miles. It's 30 nautical miles from Delaware to the Jersey Shore. And I thought I was fine, but found a pizza box. And I found some wine corks, found them, and made the thing that casts a shadow on a sundial is called the gnomon. This is a bamboo barbecue score. Are there any professors here? Anybody? Let me see, when you do this with the laser thing, it doesn't help, okay? Like, that doesn't, nobody's getting any more out of it when you shake it. I mean, just, okay? And then last year, I found a beer carton, and there, it's another thing there. And you know, traditional to take a picture with a watch, just to make sure that you know you've got it right there. Yeah. So I did take a watch to the beach, the Sundial. Oh my goodness. So you may not be aware of this, but clocks and sundials only agree at 4 moments a year, and that's because of the tilt of the Earth and the slight out of roundness, the ellipticity of the Earth's orbit. And there's a great deal to be learned by looking at the shadows of sticks. I cannot say enough about it. If you've never done it, I mean, most people go through our whole lives without realizing that you can figure out the diameter of the Earth, as Eratosthenes did. You can figure out the ellipticity, you can figure out the date, you can change the world if you are careful or diligent observing shadows. And my dad, you know, would point this out to anybody he ever met, lucky person. And one of his great ideas has yet to be embraced. He wanted to turn the Washington Monument into a giant sundial. He wrote articles about this. If you ever go there, it is amazing. I mean, the thing is so tall. How tall is it? You can walk along with the shadow. I mean, the thing is tall and big, and the shadow is long. And so, you know, the proposal is that we'd have hour lines, walkways on the National Mall that would mark the hours, and everybody in the world's life could be enriched by observing the shadow of the Washington Monument. Now, in the summertime, shadows are short. The sun is high in the sky, as observed from the Earth's surface. When the wintertime, the sun is low in the sky, the shadows get very long. And my father did point out, and we all accept it, that we would have to move the White House a couple blocks. But it's worth it. I mean, you see, you reach a point in sundialing where everything that casts a shadow, everything that sticks up, should be made into a sundial with hour lines and stuff. Maybe not everything that sticks up, but sorry. It's Valentine's Day. Sorry. It's all good. It's all good. Sorry. Just thinking out loud there. So, in this light, actually, this is pretty good. In this light, look at the base of the Washington Monument. Right there. And you can see the shadow is gray. Yes, thank you, Uncle Bill. The shadow is gray. But the shadow is also ever so slightly light blue. Shadows on Earth on a sunny day are light blue. Most people go through our whole lives without ever noticing that. Everybody who's able-bodied, who's got eyesight, can see that there's a difference between room light and daylight. Everybody can tell that, and you know it like that. But most people cannot put his or her finger on it. You can't. Why is it? Why does it look different? Well, part of it is there's a lot more, a broader spectrum of light from the sun than we usually have in rooms, usually. And the other thing is there's a little bit of blue that comes from the Earth's sky. The Earth's sky is not black. I mean, next time you're on the moon and you're walking around, it could happen, and you look at the shadow of your spacesuit. I hope you're wearing one. You'll see the shadow is stark, sharp. It's just black, because there's no sky. But on Earth, shadows are fuzzy, they're gray, and they have a little bit of blue. Now, we did not have a word for this in English, right there at the base. We did not have a word for this, so I had to make it up. The bluish tint I like to call cirrulescence. So there, by the way, English people, there is a word, Verde Essence. Does anybody know that word? It means green, tinge of green. So why not cirrulescence? Come on, help me out. So I bring all this up because of the planet Mars, obviously. Back when I was in college, during the disco era, the U.S. landed 2 spacecraft on the planet Mars, on, if I may, flippin' Mars, which is a long way from here, and landed spacecraft successfully without crashing them or smashing them apart. And this is the first picture that came back. The Minneapolis St. Paul Tribune, what is, yes, carried this picture. Papua New Guinea Gazette, Oslo Times, whatever. It was all over the world, this picture, and it's astonishing. I mean, when you look at this, Mars is a place. I mean, if you were dressed properly, you know, the spacesuit thing, you could walk around, you know, you could have a picnic. Be very careful, though. You're going to want to take, you know, it's a camping trip. You're going to take food, what that would be like Tang, and water, and also very important, you guys, you want to take something to breathe. Because if you don't, second you open the door, you'll know, yeah, be really stressful. Just for a few moments, and then. Anyway, I was at the meeting, it's about getting on 3.5 years ago, when guys who had worked on this, 1977, were talking to each other, and somebody said, you know, I don't think the sky is blue. What do you mean? It's a planet. I know, dude, but it's like a different planet. And apparently they got the hint, they noticed it by looking at the shadows. They looked at those edges. That was the first thing. Oh, yeah, something's wrong. So electronically, the sky had accidentally been made blue. And you'll hear the word among geologists, over-pinking, which is like that's a verb, or gerund. Anyway, the sky is really this color, if we had just clear faceplates on. Now, what color is it? That color is taupe? No. Eggshell, salmon, kind of pale salmon, king salmon. Maybe, you know where they sell women's stockings? It's in the upper right on that thing. It's like, no, I don't wear women's stockings. I don't wear them. I'm a huge fan. I am, but I don't wear them. So anyway, because of the success of the Science Guy show, I was invited to a meeting at Cornell University, Professor Jim Bell had a kid who loved, two kids who loved the show, or he said they did, and got invited to a meeting, and they had the drawings for the Spirit and Opportunity rover. But the rovers at that time were called Mars Exploration Rover, MER, the two MERs. And they had these engineering drawings and this big table, and I was partying with the scoop-up mechanism and the solar panels, and it's all great. And they had this picture of this thing, and I had to admit it's a great thing, whatever it is. You know, you don't want to look stupid. You're a kid show host with these people. And I said, you know, eventually I got the nerve. What is the thing? Well, Bill, that's your photometric calibration targets, what you got there. Photometric calibration. It's a test pattern for the cameras. So in order to keep from getting the colors wrong again, they had these coupons of silicone rubber that they can pigment, can dye to a certain color. And they found by trial and error, you cook them, you get them cold and hot and cold and hot and cold and hot, they stop fading. The color stabilizes. So they had those. But then along with that, they wanted to look at the shadow because they could get the color of the sky from the shadow. This is like this old photography trick, come to find out. And if you look, this is the thermal vacuum chamber, the TVAC chamber, and it has a light bulb very similar to the bulb in your oven. And it casts kind of a yellow light. You can see it there. Now, we did not have a word for this in English, that yellowish tinge. Let's see, there we go. Right there, we didn't have a word for this, so I had to make it up. Xanthidescence. Come on, xanthidescence. Come on, people, it starts with an X. Come on. It's sexy. Just help me out here. So after a few minutes, I'm in this meeting and this and that, and I go, you guys, we've got to make the photometric calibration target into a sundial. And they're looking at me, Bill, Mr. Nye. It's Mr. Nye, right? Because we all have PhDs. Bill, we don't tell time with sundials. Dude, it's the space program. Bill, I see you're wearing a watch. No, it'll be cool. Come on, we can reckon time on another world. It's like those guys who speak Klingon. Except it would be real. Yeah, Klingon's not real, you guys. Sorry, I see a couple faces. Sorry. Don't want to burst your bubble, but they made that up. Sorry. Anyway, so you guys, after 3 days, Steve Squires, head guy, goes, okay, so there are 3 sundials on Mars. I mean, the photometric calibration target has been enhanced to also serve occasionally as a sundial. There it is down in the corner. We call them the Mars dial, uppercase M, uppercase D. And Husband Hill is named after Rick Husband. It's one of the guys killed in the Columbia Space Shuttle wreck. And so it's once again at Husband Hill, you get a sense this is a place. I'm sure if Rick Husband had the opportunity, he would have been thrilled to go there and explore. And if you look at them up close, there, the lower left is the Spirit, on Spirit, the rover Spirit. Then 10 years later, I guess 9 years later, is the Curiosity rover. And you can see the difference in the sharpness of the cameras 10 years apart. It's very cool. So we did not have a word for this either, everybody, but I'm here for you. Orangedescence. Especially in the Spirit one, you can really see that orange color from the Martian sky. It's really, it's amazing. It's because the dust in the sky makes it orange during the daytime and then blue at sunset and sunrise. It's like a different world. Anyway, just to reassure you, taxpayers and voters, I did do something on this. I did the vibration analysis on the gnomon. The gnomon is the thing that casts the shadow on a sundial. It's from the Greek word to guide. And I just want to remind you all that, I mean, if that thing had shaken loose, especially at takeoff, at launch, and busted up all the electronics, that would have sucked. So I did the analysis. It's indestructible. You can't do it. But you know, Mars is a windy place. And somebody sent me this picture. And I was like, ah! And then I realized it was April 1st. You kids with your Photoshop, your electronic computer machines. Oh well. Anyway, I found out later it's Doug Ellison. And if those of you who ever go to the Planetary Society website, Doug Ellison is a big-time guy in an organization which is headed by a woman called Unmanned Spaceflight. And they create images in space as though you were there, but they're scientifically accurate. He works at Jet Propulsion Lab, and the head gal is our own Emily Lakdawala, for anybody who's a Planetary Society member. Anyway, I bring this up because I want to talk about you. Let's say this picture of the sun represents the sun. Then this picture of the Earth will represent the Earth. And for those of you unfamiliar, we like to say in astronomy that the Earth is 1 astronomical unit from the sun. It's the average distance. The Earth's orbit's a little out around, it wobbles, we got all kinds of things. But nominally, as a first cut, 1 astronomical unit. It's very easy to remember. You go up to an astronomer and you say, "Hey, you! How far is it from the Earth to the sun?" And she'll turn around and say, "It's 1 AU." And there you are. So Mercury, for you if you're unfamiliar, is about 40% as far, 0.4 AU. Venus, about 0.7 AU. And then Mars is 1.5 astronomical units from the sun. And so these different distances have affected the climate on all these worlds. If you go to Mars, as I strongly recommend that you do someday, there's the Marscape again, beautiful thing, and there in the foreground is the Sojourner rover, which was just the cutest, right there. I know, it's like a little doggy. A little doggy on Mars with wheels. Sorry. And on that mission, we took these data. So the Martian atmosphere is less than 1% in pressure. Pressure of the Martian atmosphere is less than 1% of the Earth's atmosphere. And atmosphere is another handy unit, atmospheric pressure of the Earth. And you'll still hear weather people talk about millibars, 7 millibars. But millibar is not considered a system international unit because it has a 10 to the 5th in it instead of a 10 to the 3rd or 10 to the 6th. And so now the official unit is a hectopascal. It's a pretty clumsy word, but I think we can shorten it. I want you all, we can call them HEPs. 7 HEPs. And it's very low pressure, but it's not insignificant. I mean, if you go to land there, you have to be very careful about the Martian atmosphere. It's too thin to help you, too thick to ignore. So these data were taken during that mission, and it's a comparison of the atmosphere of Mars to the atmosphere of the Earth. The Martian atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide at very low pressure. The Earth is considerably less than 1% of carbon dioxide. But it's not insignificant because it's what nourishes green plants, and that's why we're all here. Without this tiny fraction of this seemingly insignificant gas, you and I could not exist. Now, 0.03% is the same number as 300 parts per million. That's the same number. Everybody in this room was here on Earth when that number, rounding to just 1 digit, changed from 0.03 to 0.04. Last year, we got to 400 parts per million. It's not exactly to be something to be proud of, but it's something we are all going to have to live with. 0.04, 400 parts per million, is changing the world. So this is a comparison based on Mars. If we go to Venus, the comparison is really striking. Venus has 90 times the pressure of the Earth. The atmosphere is this thick, crushing thing. It's like going pretty deep in the ocean. That would be 90,000 heps. It's pretty hep. And the surface, this was taken by the Venera spacecraft, which used to be Russian, Soviet space agencies. Now it's Roscosmos, the Russian space agency. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Venus is really warm. I don't know if you guys noticed, but if you went there with your lead fishing weights, they would just melt. They would just disappear, turn into a pool. I don't know if you guys, how much you did this. I hope you haven't forgotten about this game you probably played as a kid, where you can't step on the floor because it's like lava. And then you can't drink out of the sink because that's like acid and it will kill you. Oh, let me tell you something, people. Venus is really like that. Okay, the surface of Venus is like 460 Celsius, 900 Fahrenheit, something like that. And it's because the atmosphere holds in all this heat. And you can't see the surface of Venus with a telescope or even from a spacecraft that's up pretty close because it's covered in clouds that are made of sulfuric acid. You're kidding me. No, sulfuric acid. It's, I mean, by Western reasoning, it's like hell. So, by, you know, sort of traditional Bible description. I mean, acid rain and then searing surface. So the rain doesn't, it rains sulfuric acid, but the rain doesn't get to the ground because the surface is so hot it evaporates before it gets there. I mean, it would really, you wouldn't last long on Venus. As far as we know, there's nothing that's capable of living there. Of course, there may be some Venusians that we haven't thought of, but no one thinks anything. As Venusian, by the way, is the modern adjective, having the characteristics of or pertaining to Venus. In the 19th century, that adjective was venereal. It was. I mean, we had to make changes, yeah. The goddess of love who will just kill you with acid and burn you. Yeah. Anyway, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, because you got nothing else to do, thank you, but I was in Wyoming last week. Old friend of mine is retired there, and he goes skiing. That's his thing. And the head of the park service there, park ranger, took just a few minutes and compiled this graph. He just took the lowest temperature every day over the last 100 years, back to, well, 1910, more than that, 105 years, 104 years. And the lowest temperature every day has gotten steadily warmer, just gotten warmer. And this year in Jackson, there was no snow down at the base of the mountain, no snow. I don't know if you've ever been skiing out west, but having no snow at a ski area is undesirable. It's not really your thing. But there's a lot of snow up higher on the mountain, but it was in the 50s Fahrenheit. It was like 15 Celsius at the base of the mountain. Here in Minneapolis, this is something I got from that electric internet that the kids use. And this is the average temperature here in Minneapolis over the last 100 years. More than that, 200 years. And what you would do, the reason some go up and some go down is they took the average temperature, added them all together, divided by the number of temperatures, and you get that average horizontal line, and then some go below it and some go above it. And for you calculus buffs, or even, I guess, algebra buffs, you do a linear regression. You see how that's bigger? The left one's bigger than the right one? So when you're all done, the line kind of goes like this. So the average temperature in Minneapolis has been going up. Now, I did that by eyeball. It may not be accurate, but you can get the idea. You see that there's heavier stuff on the left than the right. It's an estimate. But in other words, even in Minneapolis, where the temperature has skyrocketed today to -2 Fahrenheit, like -19 Celsius, -20 Celsius. By the way, it's so much easier in Celsius, you guys. I'll just tell you. I work, no, it's not my fault. No. No, I grew up all Fahrenheit, all inches. I mean, Boeing, all the airplanes were in inches. Everything was in inches. Body stations, as they're called, was all measured in inches. All the temperatures were in Fahrenheit. Any engineers here know degrees Rankine? Rankine is absolute temperature measured in Fahrenheit degrees. Rankine's another British thermodynamics guy, or Scottish guy, sorry, Scottish. And anyway, once you get used to Celsius, then I worked at a Japanese company where everything was metric. It's just, I'm just saying. So in your lifetime, I hope that organically changes. I mean, we buy liters of Coca-Cola, right? And everybody now will mumble on the airplane about Celsius. I'm just hoping it creeps in. Our money is metric, okay? We have pennies and dollars. Nobody's running around with shillings and guineas and stuff. Anyway, I mention this because in your lifetime, the biggest problem is going to be climate change. And you can see any way you want that the world is getting warmer. And by the way, when we have the occasional exciting polar vortex, that is consistent with computer models of climate change, that erratic temperature swings are part of the future. And the reason this is happening, you guys, is not that hard to understand, in my opinion. If we fly around in space, as I keep talking about, and you look at the Earth from the International Space Station, let's say, or your own rocket ship, or you buy a ride on one of these new tourism companies when they get into business, it looks like, and you take this picture, it looks like you didn't get the camera in focus. But actually, that's not it. That's the atmosphere. The atmosphere is only that thick. If we had some extraordinary car and some extraordinary highway and we could drive straight up for less than an hour, you'd be in outer space. You'd be in outer space. It's that close. It's barely 100 kilometers, 60-something miles, till you really start getting into spacey space where the sky is black. And there's a few molecules as you go up quite a ways further, but for practical purposes, I mean, you're done. That's it. It's like, as the old saying goes, it's like varnish on a globe. It's just so thin you can't really perceive it unless you look really closely. So when I was 9 years old, my family went to the World's Fair in New York City. New York, New York. The town's so nice they named it twice. And they had a big total board, or tote board, depicting the world's population of humans, which I guess included my old boss. Sometimes, I'm not sure, of course, but, and we just missed it. My family and I just missed it. Now, I'm with, in this case, we're with my dad, the guy who slows the car down to take pictures of the odometer as it changes from 99,999 to 100,000 miles. And we were all very disappointed. We just missed it changing from 2,999,999,999 people in the world to 3 billion. 3 billion people in 1965. Yes, people, I was alive in 1965. Surprises me also, yes. As of this morning, in the hotel room, the world's population is 7.2 billion. In my lifetime, the human population has more than doubled, 30% more than doubled. And that's it, you guys. It's not rocket surgery. The atmosphere is this thick, and there's 7 billion people breathing and burning, and here we are. That's what happened. It's not a conspiracy. We just got carried away. So in our culture, especially in the United States, well, I mentioned this, we have people that spend a lot of time denying climate change. And why they do this is not obvious at first, but it is apparently very closely connected to the fossil fuel industry. There's James Inhofe. If you go to Oklahoma, their whole deal is what they call the energy sector, what the rest of us would call oil. And then Marcia Blackburn from Tennessee, her whole deal is coal. All her constituents are coal, and they're Roy Spencer's a British guy who's a whole nother thing. Can I say whole nother? But anyway, these people spend a great deal of time denying climate change. Senator Inhofe has gotten to the point where he's written a book about it. Climate conspiracy. See, you guys, let me just tell you, I don't know what your deal is, but conspiracy theories are lazy. Wouldn't it be great if there were some group of people deliberately screwing everything up? No, humans just screw it up without a conspiracy. We don't need people in charge to screw things up. We're great at it. And this is bad. This is bad for us, for all of us. Because climate change is, in my opinion, the biggest problem humankind faces. Maybe you could call it the biggest problem humankind has ever faced. And along with this, as you may know, the one-year anniversary was last week. I debated a guy in Kentucky about this. Right on, thank you. And along with his other extraordinary views, he denies climate change, and he wants his parishioners, his flock, his people to deny climate change as well. Now, this whole thing started, for those of you who have not followed the fascinating story of my life, when I was in New York City and I was on Big Think. And Big Think is this cool website where they just ask you questions. And I had gotten up at 5 in the morning Eastern time, which was 2 a.m. Western time, California time. I'd just flown there. Well, I mean, I was in a plane. It wasn't me. And so they asked me about creationism. And I just, well, you know, don't do it. Don't let your kids do it. We need scientists and engineers of the future. Just, I don't believe in it. So as of this morning, you guys, the thing's had almost 7 million views. This one remark. Well, I mean, it was heartfelt, but it wasn't like the reason I was there or the most important thing in the world to me at that time. But it led to this crazy debate in Kentucky, and now we're at over 4 million views of that thing last year. And whether you love it or hate it, somebody's interested in it, right? I mean, that there are 4 million people watching this debate with a guy who holds a worldview that is odd at best. It just shows you how really people in the United States, and maybe to a lesser extent, English-speaking world, are still troubled or have difficulty with this fundamental idea in science. I mean, you can say the fundamental idea of geology is tectonic plates. And by the way, my dad, Rockhound Ned, didn't know anything about tectonic plates when he was in geology school. No such thing. The tectonic plates weren't really accepted. I mean, they had been discussed at length, but they weren't really embraced until really people found that mid-ocean ridge during World War II, that people trying to find ways to sneak submarines across the Atlantic found the seafloor spreading. That's when it really, hey, wait a minute, that's true, that's crazy. South America does fit into Africa. That's wild. Anyway, the thing about it, it wouldn't matter. But these guys at this organization, the Answers in Genesis thing, they have this very detailed, aggressive curriculum that they press on young people in that area, really around the world. I mean, these look like science tests, right? They look real. These are, you know, here's some stuff about electricity. There's even some electronics, some and NAND gates there. There's some paleontology. And they got, hey, the complete set. Wait, $32.99. Don't answer yet. You also get. And so anyway, they work very hard to indoctrinate people like you. And it's very controversial in that area this year, right now, because they're really taking it up a notch. They want to build a new facility they call the Ark Park. And this picture to me captures. See, this kid comes into the Creation Museum and sees where dinosaurs were vegetarians until the fall. The reason they have those teeth, well, they do have those, it's not explained. And all the animals living together, and somehow this guy was, unskilled guy, was able to build a ship that floated around for a year and all that stuff. And along with all these things, something that for me as an engineer, as Michelle was saying, brought up in the US, this to me is really troubling. Part of the charge, or what you're supposed to do when you are a congressperson, member of Congress or the Senate, is to promote the progress of science and the useful arts. That's in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, to promote science and the useful arts. And to me, useful arts is sort of 18th century language to mean engineering, to use science to make things, solve problems and make things. And this is, so this facility and this worldview, which was held by many, many people, it got 4 million views, people wanted to watch it just to see what's going on. This is inconsistent with the progress of science and useful arts. But don't worry, people there were very troubled. Here's Bill Nye, the Science Lie, all over the internet the next morning. And this county in Tennessee is just not far. You can drive there to Petersburg, Kentucky. And you know, yes, if only Bill Nye weren't here, then the Earth would be 6,000 years old, somehow. What? Furthermore, the Creation Museum, as it's called. By the way, a museum, for those of you who've never been to a museum, they have artifacts, you know, things from the past, like things that used to be used for something else, and now here it is. At the museum, the Creation Museum, it's all robots and dioramas. There's no piece of Noah's Ark. Like, there's no such thing. There's no, what else would you have? Pegs or planks, stuff that, like, dude. They have no fossils, by the way. And the whole thing is built, it's made of limestone, sitting on top of Kentucky limestone. And I hope someday you get a chance to go to Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. It really is spectacular. And it's there because it's an ancient seafloor made of ancient seashells that's been rinsed out by centuries or millennia of rainwater. It's amazing. But the whole thing was captured for me by a question from the audience. So, by the way, I found out many months later, it was written by a gal named Tracy Moody, who's quite the cartoonist. Look at her handwriting. It's fabulous. What, if anything, would change your mind? What, if anything, would change your mind? And so, you know, I went off on, yes, if you found some fossils of animals trying to swim between the layers in the Grand Canyon, if you found some way to get giant boulders on top of the ground in Oregon, instead of being washed there by an ancient flood, which also made the whole landscape of Washington, eastern Washington state, if you found some way to put those on top instead of having sink to the bottom, as you would expect in the flood, if you had some way to get light from stars, which are clearly more than 6,000 light years away, if you had some way to get light from those stars to the Earth in less than 6,000, you know, then we could take a meeting, you know. But no, if you don't know this, the guy said, Mr. Ham said, nothing. Nothing would change my mind. Nothing. Imagine this guy's on a jury. This guy and his followers are on a jury, and you're accused of something, or you're trying to get your rent back from the landlord who's ripping you off, who said you poked holes in the wall. Nope, nothing would change my mind. Made up my mind. Done. My friends, that's just anti-science. That is not using critical thinking skills. That is not using even what you would call common sense. And as my parents so often pointed out, common sense, not that common. But it really is an amazing thing, and this is why the United States has just not gotten it done when it comes to climate change. And you guys, I know many of you watch the show, and I love you, and I've been working on climate change for a long freaking time. My first kid's book, 1993, of a climate change demonstration. On the show, on the Science Guy show, we did several demonstrations, climate change. On Stuff Happens, we did climate change demonstrations. I go back and back on this. And I've made very little progress. And then this one, I like this one frame. This is back when Piers Morgan was still on CNN. I don't know if you know, but they had to fire him or remove him. He just would not stop talking about gun control. He's a British guy. No, he just wouldn't. Anyway, they had to. But this moment's where I'm pointing out to Ken Ham that he's denying that he's a denier. And it just, oh, I don't deny climate change. Yes, you do. Except I was being calm. Oh, yes, you do, Mr. Ham. Now, anybody here, a lot of STEM, science, technology, engineering. Anybody here writing software? Anybody want to be a software developer? Okay, you can get a job. You can get a job in Kentucky at the new Ark Park, where they're going to build a replica of Noah's Ark. And so somebody in the front row, a heckler, just asked me if he can use me for a reference. Yeah, sure. So, way to go. So, solutions developer, Petersburg, Kentucky. Petersburg, Kentucky is across the river from Cincinnati. I mean, you can get a hamburger. Like, don't worry about it. It's near civilization. There's cash machines and stuff. And Visual Studio, Agile. If you know Scrum, that'd be a plus. And then SQL would be great. And then along with this, at the Ark Park, you have to prove your firmness in one's walk with Christ, which you can do if you are a private organization, a family-run business or something. Right now, apparently, you're allowed to do. But you cannot do that. Also, you can't be gay. You can't be homosexual. They will not accept you, no matter how good a software developer you are. And so you can do that, as I say, if you're a family business, but you cannot expect to take tax dollars from the Commonwealth of Kentucky if you do these two things. This is against the law. You're not allowed to discriminate against people for their religious beliefs or for their sexual orientation. It's just a rule, okay? And the rule has been taking us 200 years to get, but it's here. And these guys are not letting up, man. They are not letting up. Using a tactic by Dwayne Gish, this is from their website, it's describing me, unfair characteristic, and it uses a term which I had to look up, elephant hurling. Bill Nye is accused of elephant hurling. I mean, you guys, you may have noticed, I spent some time with elephants on camera. I've spoken with elephants, I've snuggled against their trunks and stuff, it's been fun. But I can't hurl them. I mean, I'm not at that level. But it just means throwing out a bunch of stuff. But I remind you guys, we have the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Shall not respect an establishment of religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof. We took that meeting in 1776. These guys from a different culture said, look, religion has caused us trouble in government. We're leaving it out. You can party on, but we're not going to put it in government. And then the Ark Park guys want to have this based, as they say, solely on religious beliefs, which you're not allowed to do by law. And they've used their constituents' dollars, contributions to their church, or whatever you call it, their parish, their ministry, to put up billboards. Thank God you can't sink the ship. In other words, they are demanding, they want the people, voters and taxpayers in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, no matter what their belief, to give them tax breaks. You guys, that's just against the law. I mean, obviously, to those of us on the outside. So with all that, you guys, I wrote this book. And I can't tell you how happy I am. I was walking through the Minneapolis airport, and for the first time, I saw it for sale in an airport. I can't tell you. No, you guys, that's a line, man, when they're selling in an airport. Like, I'm as cool as Glenn Beck, all right? I've made it. I'm like Bill O'Reilly, yes. Mike Huckabee, yes, I'm there. I'm at their level, sort of. And I'm very proud of it. I put my heart and soul into it. I know many of you have purchased it, and I very, very much appreciate it. And people say to me, Bill, Nye, you're a mechanical engineer. What do you know about evolution? I go, I know something, okay? I went to high school. And I spent so little time researching. It's a primer on evolution. And I'll just tell you guys, sneak preview, I visited Monsanto yesterday. And I have a lot to think about. It's going to be cool. So I'm going to write another chapter for the next edition. It's going to be cool. But I don't want you to feel that you're getting ripped off. I used to work on a drawing board for a living. I used to be a productive member of society. I worked at Boeing on 747 mostly, some 767. Don't worry, I was very well supervised. People checked my work. But I made these drawings, and I thought that it's St. Martin's Press. They're like a real company. Okay, it's not just Bill with an HP printer in his room. It's like a real deal. Anyway, I thought they would hire a real graphic artist to really do the actual thing, you know. But there's some drawings in there that are just, that's my handwriting. I'm sorry. They just put them in there. And right now, we got a big deal. People going around who don't want their kids and they don't want to get vaccinated. And I just like, I wouldn't say this, like if I were on MSNBC, I wouldn't say, are you high? Like, people just don't know, you've lost, whoever's out there doing this, you've lost sight of our history. When Europeans first came to North America, they killed everybody because they had smallpox. When I was in elementary school, I had a classmate who had polio. You do not want polio. And you can avoid it like that, like that. Okay, so what I think has happened, people have forgotten they had measles, and it wasn't that big a deal. Cool, measles. Oh, a few classmates got killed, yeah, now and then. But most people, measles isn't a big deal. So they have somehow taken that and blended it with all the other just deadly, deadly diseases out there. Now, you guys, there's a big deal this year about Ebola. And I just want to remind you that Ebola is a result of evolution. We would not be fighting an Ebola virus if it didn't mutate, if it hadn't mutated. So we do not want a class of taxpayers and voters who does not understand how this works. We have an immune system. Our biggest enemies are not lions and tigers and bears. I mean, if you're by yourself in the woods, a bear can be troublesome. I'm right there. You got a deal. But generally, lions and tigers and bears, not an issue. What's going to kill you are germs and parasites. That's our problem. And so in my book, I have written some stuff about the Red Queen and evolution, and well, you've got to keep running all the time, otherwise germs and parasites will kill you. And so this scientific understanding is very important for all of us. So I appreciate you sitting through this, and I appreciate many of you bought the book. I'm just trying to change the world here. So along with everything else, this guy, who is fascinating, I admit, has this deal. NASA is wasting a lot of money looking for alien life in outer space. And it's really because of evolution. If those people at NASA didn't believe in evolution, they would know. I don't know if you heard this. They would know that there's no intelligent life out there. Can't be. Because the Earth is it. We are the chosen people, according to Ken. I'm skeptical. And this is another way where he is holding us back. This worldview is holding us back. My friends, space exploration, astronomy, observation of shadows on sundials, this has enabled our entire society. Who here does not have global positioning on his or her phone? Nobody, okay? If you didn't know the world was round, that thing isn't going to work, all right? If you didn't have satellites, you know, when I was a kid, seriously, it was a big deal when the weather report was off a week. That was a deal. But if it was off a day or two, nobody really worried about it. Now, if the weather report is off 18 minutes, people start bitching. And that information comes from outer space. Okay, space exploration has changed the world for the better. Now, I am so old, and I had such an odd course of dumb luck that I had Carl Sagan for astronomy. And for those of you, I know. Thank you, yes. Thank you. So let me just point out, you guys, I had satisfied my mechanical engineering requirements, which are nothing but fun. Design of mechanical components, heat transfer, fluid mechanics, party after party. So then I took a freshman course for fun in astronomy, because my dad was in astronomy. So I had Carl Sagan for astronomy. And those of you who don't know the story, he advocated strongly that we put a message to the future on the Voyager spacecraft. And there was these 2 gold plaques, one on each spacecraft, and they have a message to the future. They also have a phonograph record, because you got to figure when some alien civilization finds us 300, pick a number, million years from now, on the order of 1 billion years, they'll, have 2 turntables and a microphone, and they'll figure out how to use it. It'll be great. And, it's very easy for those of you who have never really looked at the plaques or replicas. That's obviously a hydrogen atom there. And these are obviously the resonance in binary of the nearby pulsars. And so just anybody could figure it out. Just take a few minutes. And then these are 2 pictures of humans, and they're naked. And that was gotta tell you, it was a big deal in 1976. Naked people, you're sending pornography into space. Okay. Guys, really, chill, okay? Anyway, this is quite an extraordinary idea. And those of you, I know we're Minnesotans, we don't live near the coast too much, but if you go to the ocean, or you can go to Lake Superior, and you put a message in a bottle, throw it out there, you're hoping somebody in Canada finds it and writes back. I mean, it might have, some accents and stuff, but you'd be able to figure it out. And of course, if it's Canadian, they'd be so sorry. So sorry about something. So sorry, I'm sorry, so sorry. I found your bottle, but it was wet, or whatever it is. But when you write that message, it probably won't come back to you. It's probably gone forever. Probably sink or land someplace or never show up. But you write that message for yourself. And it's really a remarkable thing, because it gives you pause. Like, what's important to you? Why do you put that on there? And so on this plaque was stuff about us. And on the record was sounds from the Earth. And by the way, I was in class when Carl Sagan asked us, what rock and roll song should we put on the album? And he wanted to put on Roll Over Beethoven by Johnny B. Good. And I'm like, dude, that's just a name of, it's nothing to do with Beethoven, okay? So Johnny B. Good is on there, because we voted in the spring of '77, yeah. Well, thank you, yeah. So if you're ever out there, if you're ever out just past the heliopause, where the influence of the sun is gone completely, and you happen to cross this record, it took that spacecraft 36 years to get there, so keep that in mind when you go looking for it. But this guy had a huge influence on me. I took one class, and he started the Planetary Society, this organization, in 1980. And the technology in those days was U.S. mail. I got a letter, a paper letter, in the mail. We used to store information outside of our body. You may not be familiar. It's very thin, made from wood pulp. But it was... Anyway, so I joined the Planetary Society, 1980. I've been a member ever since. Now, you guys all know Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He is a close friend of mine. We spend a lot of time together, and he's on the board of the Planetary Society. And I don't know if you know this about Neil, he's very much into wine. I've been with him, and they have contests. They have 4 wines, and you have to determine which one is which and which year it is, and he can do it. He's amazing. He owns thousands of bottles of wine. So we're at this meeting, and something happened, I think, with the wine. And now I'm the CEO of the Planetary Society. I'm not really clear. It's still not clear on what happened there. So now I'm in charge of this organization. And since Sagan's day, we have had this dream of launching a solar sail spacecraft. Now, you may not have ever heard of this, but you may know all about it. It's probably a mixture of people. It is an amazing, counterintuitive thing. Light, although it has no mass, photons of light have no mass. Nevertheless, they're pure energy and they have momentum. They will impart oomph to something. And so in the 1970s, NASA planned this mission to build a huge sail, this thing made of super shiny plastic, to get pushed by sunlight to catch up with Comet Halley. Now, you may know Comet Halley as Halley's Comet, but, and Bill Haley and the Comet certainly have made an important contribution when you go to rock around the clock. But they met people from the Halley family, and they say Halley, not Haley. Anyway, this thing was going to catch up with Comet Halley, but it was canceled to build the space shuttle. That was the trade-off. But the Planetary Society has stuck with this all this time, and we are going to finally launch our own solar sail in May. So it's right on. I love you, man. So if you got nothing else to do, check out planetary.org. We have what I think is a very cool logo, which that's important. And you can participate. So it's 46,000 people around the world who just thought this was cool, sent us a few bucks. We hired some very skilled people, and we built a spacecraft, and it launches on the 6th of May on an Atlas V rocket. It's a so-called secondary payload. The primary payload is an Air Force payload, and everybody thinks it's the for the Air Force. In other words, they won't tell us what it is. They won't reveal. It's probably a spy satellite. I don't know what it is. And so we're going to get spranged off into space. We're going to deploy the sails. We'll send pictures down, and this will be a test flight. And then the main flight will be in August of 2016 on a Falcon 9. Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla was on our board, but he had to recuse himself because he takes all this money from NASA and so on. But it's exciting, you guys. So we are carrying this legacy forward. We have this dream of exploring what Carl Sagan always called the cosmic ocean. Because the more we know about the cosmos and our place within it, the more we know about ourselves. And space exploration has changed the world. And so I encourage you all to check this out, planetary.org. Meanwhile, here on the Earth, we have climate change. And we've got to get to work. Now, this is me on my house. Actually, it's a picture of me. I'm over here. On the roof of my house in Los Angeles. This is in Studio City, which is like in the valley. We're totally in the valley. And so I have 4 kilowatts of solar panels. I have a solar hot water system that's in the foreground. You guys, look. Solar hot water. The heat is free. Okay? It's just plumbing. I mean, who's better at plumbing than the United States? I mean, Holland. I don't know what. I want one of you to go in the solar hot water business, okay? The energy that you need is free. You could get rich. I don't care about me. Even in the wintertime, the thing gets hot. It's a box with a zigzag of tubes in it. Come on. Anyway, and then also I have a Solar Tube. This is a brand name. It's more efficient than a conventional skylight because it has these grooves, just like the grooves in some of these theater lights, that direct sunlight down the tube. I still go in the room below and try to turn the light off. It's been 8 years. It still throws me off. And my solar panels here in this picture are about 15% efficient. My watch is solar powered. It's Eco Drive. You get it at Macy's. And I've never wound it. 8 going on 9 years. Never wound it because it's powered by the sun. And these solar panels are about 10% efficient. But I always say to you guys, what if they were 50% efficient or 80% efficient? There's enough sunlight in the 4 corners region of the U.S. to power the U.S. 3 times over. There's enough wind in North Dakota. And if you include like Albert Lee, there's enough wind, you know, like, no, dear friend from Albert Lee. There's enough wind to power North America 5 times over. If we could just get that energy from there to where we all want it, we could change the world. Now, my parents, as I said, were both veterans of World War II. They're buried at Arlington Cemetery. It's an amazing place. And they are considered part of the greatest generation. You've probably heard this expression, the greatest generation. They just got to work, got her done. My mom, clearly the most satisfying time for her professional life was when she was in the Navy. My dad lived through this thing. He shot down planes. Who knows what he did? Never talked about it. But everybody got together and solved this enormous problem of these dictators on other sides of the world trying to change everything for the worse. And you've probably seen this famous poster, We Can Do It, where women joined the workforce, really in droves for the first time. And everybody got to work, working together as part of the greatest generation. Now, these are posters from that day. Everybody, let's have a victory garden. You buy them and we'll fly them. And then there's the British one. This time we're all on the front lines. I've been to the War Museum in Britain. It's really something, you guys. Bombs were dropping on the city of London. I mean, imagine bombs dropping in Minneapolis. It's just really, if you haven't lived through it, as none of us, very few of us have, it's really, it gets to you. Everybody was on the front line. Everybody was working together. So what I want you all to do is become the next great generation. I want you all to pull together and do whatever it is we have to do to, dare I say it, change the world. Now, there's going to be technical solutions, right on. There's going to be wind power and solar power. I drove for 3 years the Nissan Leaf. I live in New York City mostly now, so I don't have a car. But the Leaf is an existing car. It's got big batteries. People who know how many toilets flush at halftime of the Super Bowl, you know where everybody's car is parked. In the same way, engineers know this. So we could store energy for everybody in everybody's car. If we had a more efficient battery, by the way, there's a thing that really is called a bipolar battery. It's not a state of mind, it's a design. And then I'm excited about the liquid metal batteries. These are batteries where the one electrode is molten magnesium, like mag wheels are made of. And then the other is a layer of molten antimony. Antimony or antimony is the metal next to tin on the periodic table. And then they're separated by a layer of molten table salt. So the whole thing runs really hot, 1,000 degrees. So you don't want that in your car. You don't want liquid metal in the back of your car. That's a bad thing. Go around a turn, can you see? Be a problem. And you might not know this, but in some parts of the world, people go up and down hills. Minnesota, you might not know that, but a lot of places, it's significant. Anyway, if we had better batteries, if you were to invent the better battery, or if you were the venture capitalist that enabled it, or if you were the attorney that protected the intellectual property, or if you were the international relations person who made the deal to get the metals traded across countries so that these batteries could be created, you could change the world. And you could, dare I say it, get rich. So then we're going to need a smart electrical grid, a smart grid, and then we'd connect it to these nanotube power lines, which don't exist yet. But one of you is going to invent it or enable it, or a dozen of you. And I met Rick Smalley, the guy who invented, or discovered rather, buckyballs, Buckminster fullerenes, the nanotubes. He said it's like the electron goes to sleep at one end of the transmission line, has a dream, and wakes up at the other end with no electrical resistance. Furthermore, when they get hot, when there's a lot of electricity running to them, they tighten up, and the resistance goes down, the opposite of conventional transmission lines. If you can do all this stuff, we could change the world. Now, that's technology. That's bottom up, but that's not going to do it. We need top down. I am so old. How old are you? My dad bought a 49-star flag. You might not know this, but there are about 6 months between Alaska and Hawaii entering the United States, becoming states. And the 49-star flag is not a prime number, 7 times 7. And by the way, when Puerto Rico is finally embraced, 51 is not a prime number either. Whoa! No, it's not a prime number. Looks like one. Anyway, in Alaska, which, as you know, is a bastion of bleeding heart, liberal, progressive, blue state thought, they have a top-down system to redistribute wealth. They really do, really in Alaska, of all places. They have a thing called the Alaska Permanent Fund. They take money from the North Slope oil. Alaska is divided geologically into these logical regions. And the northern slope, northern region, is where the oil and gas comes from. And right now, the Alaska Permanent Fund has $42 million in it. And this year, if you are an Alaska resident, you have to be a resident. You can be a newborn, you can be octogenarian, but you have to live there. You can't just be registered to vote and live in another state. You got to be there. You will get almost $2,000 this year. Just, whoop, here you go. Whoop, 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 whoop. Redistribute the wealth. And this is top down in a generally libertarian, very conservative state. And they accept this, and they embrace it, and they're proud of it. So what if, in the United States, we, with 50 stars on the flag, we embraced a different system where we would have a fee and dividend on carbon dioxide, on carbon. Now, we would never, ever in my community use the word tax. You know, say tax. No such thing as a tax. This is a fee. Carbon fee. So when you make a lot of carbon, you've got to pay for it. And this applies to when you drive your car. Right now, it's estimated it would raise the price of gasoline 10 cents a gallon. 10 cents! Ah! 10 cents, people, come on. You all go to Starbucks, for crying out loud. You don't know what 10 cents is, it just disappears. You want a cookie? That's $35. Cool, it's great. But we all do it. Anyway, then we would redistribute that money to, if you will, the middle class. Now, rich people, people who fly in planes all day, people who own airplanes, people who have 2 houses, people who have extra big garage, 3-car garages that they heat all winter, whatever, they spend more money and make more carbon than middle class, generally middle class people, and they would pay for it. They would pay for it, and the world would keep spinning. So it would make fossil fuels cost more. We would redistribute wealth to the middle class. And the other thing that would just happen, I guarantee you, is the bottom-up stuff would happen. We would have investment in renewable energy. It would just, people would just invest because they want to save money. It would just happen. And we would redistribute the wealth, and we have a system for doing this. We have it in place. Say what you will about it. We have the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. You can hear the grown-ups groaning. Yes. Death and taxes, that's all you get. That's all you can count on. The rest of it's gravy, people. And we could do this. We could go bottom up and top down, become the next great generation, and dare I say it, change the world. Now, on all 3 of the rovers on Mars right now, on Opportunity, Spirit, and Curiosity, Sojourner's still there, but these 3 rovers all have Mars dials. Next time you go to the world's most popular real museum, the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., you can go to the Mars Gallery. I won't say that I'll always be there bending over. But you can see the flight spare, as it's called, the leftover 4th Mars dial, waiting to run tests with, and just while you're at it, you make a spare. And around the edge of each of the 4 Mars dials, in very small letters, it says, "To those who visit here, we wish a safe journey and the joy of discovery." And that, my friends, is the essence of science. That is why you're in college. That's why you get an education, is to help to refine your skill at feeling the joy of discovery. Our predecessors, who did not feel the joy of discovery, got outcompeted by our ancestors who did. The humans who came before us, who felt the joy of discovery, they went over the hill, they went over the horizon, they looked at the next place to find opportunity to support their families and enrich their lives. And it's the joy of discovery that drives me every day. It's why I get out of bed. Last November, Carl Sagan's papers were admitted to the Library of Congress. And on that day, the Cassini mission team, Cassini is a spacecraft in orbit around Saturn. It's been in space almost 20 years, powered by plutonium, and it's still working just fine. This picture was submitted to the Library of Congress in his honor that same day. It's what humans would call the south pole of Saturn looking up through the rings, illuminated by sunlight. It's beautiful. And it gives you a sense of what I like to call our place in space. Also in this picture is the Earth. The Earth is right there. And I hope you get a sense when you look at pictures like this that that's it. There's nobody coming to save us. The Earth is the whole deal for humankind. There's no place to go. We're going to go terraform Mars. Not so easy. This is it. This is where we live. If we go up that way, about 100,000 kilometers, which in spaceflight is nothing, there's the same view. The sun's now almost in the center, and there is the Earth right there. Now, when I was in third grade, Mrs. Cochran, second grade teacher, Mrs. Cochran was third grade teacher, told us that there are more stars in the sky than grains of sand on the beach. And I remember thinking, lady, have you ever been to a beach? For crying out loud. Are you, come on. That's crazy. You go to the eastern shore of the U.S., go to California, you look this way, thousands of miles, there's just sand. Okay, sand, 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 sand. Get down this, another 1,000 miles, sand. You shuffle your feet and there's sand. You look behind you, there's sand. The tide goes out a little bit, there's more sand. I mean, I wouldn't have expressed it like, Mrs. Cochran, are you high? That's impossible. That is impossible. Get this, people. There are about 100 times as many stars in the observable universe as grains of sand on Earth. And so I remember as a kid standing there on the beach and just thinking, I wonder if you could, like if you were in a spaceship and the sun was going down on the Earth like the Washington Monument shadow getting longer and longer, I wonder if I could like stand like a statue. I wonder if my shadow would like extend in space and somebody could see little Bill there. No, dude, you're insignificant. Ain't gonna happen. It really got to me. I mean, I started to feel like no different from the sand. Like I'm just another speck with these grains of sand, which are specks, on the Earth, which is in turn, in the cosmic scheme of things, just another speck, which orbits the sun, completely unremarkable star. There are billions of them. I'm a speck, standing on specks, which are part of a speck, orbiting another speck in the middle of a bunch of other specks, in the middle of specklessness. I suck. I am nothing. But with your mind, with your brain, which is only this big, in the case of my old boss, of course, it's much smaller. But with your brain, you can imagine all of this. With your brain, you can know the cosmos. We can know our place in space. And with our brains, my friends, we can, dare I say it, change the world. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. Oh, I love you guys. Woo! Woo! Oh, wow. All right. Wait, you've been doing this. Wait a second. Wait a second.
But I should stay on the floor.
Go Augies! Happy Valentine's Day! Woo! Thanks, you guys. Thank you. So
All right.
we have
Thank you
time
so
for a few
much.
questions. Yes,
Thank you
read
so
it.
much. We have a
Moderator.
lot of questions.
Moderator, yes.
Moderator. My name is Bob Groven. I'm the director of the honors program, and I'm also a professor of communication studies here at Augsburg College. And we have a lot of questions.
Oh, let's bring them on.
All right, we'll bring them on. I have to tell you, the most popular question.
And you guys, thank you all for coming. I know you got to go. You got lives to lead. You got studies to do and wrestling matches to match.
Indeed.
Carry on. Thanks for coming. And
I think
thank you,
many
the
of
rest of you,
them-
for staying.
Yeah. They're studying for an exam in my class, I think. That's
Probably. They'd never miss it, sir. They'd
No.
never. They're all weekend.
I have to tell you, the most popular question we've received, actually, is, will you be my Valentine?
The answer is, in a broad sense, yes.
Yeah.
I love you all, but
I thought you might need to meet him first.
I was going to say, I don't know that there's time. Even a guy of my athletic ability, I don't think. Sorry. Sorry, you guys. But thank you all. Really, that's really sweet. Thank you.
So we've got a variation on that question anyway that you might be able to answer, and I know that you wrote an article about this. So the question is from Laura from Sioux City, Iowa, and she asks, can love be understood scientifically?
Well, So my claim, Laura, by the way, what's in Sioux City, Iowa? Jolly Time popcorn. Yes. I mean, if nothing else, that is an enormous contribution to humankind. I just can't tell you. Popcorn is just a great joy. So for me, love, what we feel as love, is part of being human. And for me, humans are a result of evolution. Whether or not there was somebody in charge who set the whole thing in motion, that's a very difficult question to answer. But those of us who do not feel love get eliminated. I mean, you don't make it. The rest of the tribe, you don't have anything in common with the rest of us. So love is what makes us all go. I mean, for me, it's my love of science, my love of humans, even my old boss. We all feel it. And so my claim, which is extraordinary and for you to evaluate, my claim is not only is your size and shape, your hair color, your eye color, number of fingers, fingernails, whatever, not only is that a result of evolution, but so is what you feel. What you feel is a result of evolution. And for those of you who haven't read my book, weird, I talk about this urge that we have for altruism, for being nice to other people, for being nice to dogs and what have you. And this seems to be deep within us. And one of my favorite examples of that, of course, is bats. Bats are just cool, and they behave altruistically. From an observer standpoint, bats seem to feel love for other bats. So way to go. Batman and Batwoman, way to go. Yes, lead on, sir.
All right. Next question is from Brianna in St. Paul, Minnesota, and she asks, what originally inspired you to go into science?
That is a great question. And the answer is, not sure. But it was before I was 4, and I think it was before I was 3. I remember watching bees, bumblebees, and just thinking, that's crazy. They have such tiny wings compared to, I mean, bee is not a big thing by human standards, but they have tiny wings, and yet they're able to fly around. And then I got stung by a bee, which still I'm not a fan of. And my brother had a chemistry set back when they were dangerous and cool. And he made ammonia. He made ammonia in my hand. And we put it on, my mother had already put ammonia on it. I put more ammonia on it, and it felt better. And I thought, that's like magic. But my mom, being the way, by the way, my mom was recruited, because the family myth, she was good at math and science. My mom said, it's not magic, it's, yes, yes! So it's been a long time, way before I was 5 years old. Yes,
All right.
yes.
Let's see. Next question comes from Paul, who's an Augsburg alum and living also in St.
By the
Paul.
way, looking at my giant face head thing, Did you check out my tie, people?
Yeah, got the Augsburg bow tie going. All right.
It was a gift. It was a gift this morning. Check it out. Yes.
All right.
Lead on, sorry.
Paul from St. Paul asks, are you concerned or encouraged or something in between by the privatization of research and development?
I'm concerned. You guys, there's this perception right now based, I think, largely on the great success of Microsoft, Apple, SpaceX, and Starbucks, whatever, that you can start a business and get rich, and you can invest in science, and you can do all these wonderful things, and that's true. But I still claim there's no substitute for government investment in basic research. That's my claim. That's my claim. And the example, just from your everyday experience, 2 years ago, people were pretty sure they found the Higgs boson. Now, what does that do for us? Nobody knows. But someday it will do something. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to slip. Sorry, it's a little digression. The Higgs boson was found to 5 sigma. I don't know if that means anything to a lot of people, but it means 5 standard deviations. The bell-shaped curve goes like this, where it changes from this to this. That's the standard deviation. Found it at 5. Simply put, 5 ain't 7. So we'll see if that's really, really there. But anyway, that would never happen. That research would never be done without government investment. No entrepreneur is going to say, wow, I want to smash atoms and build a generator as big as a city, electricity as big as as Minneapolis to power this thing. It just wouldn't happen. And so, by the way, to really get to the Higgs at 7 sigma, you probably have to build an even bigger machine. And that takes government investment. And you guys, everybody has been affected by our discovery of, in this case, of radiation and the basic physics that connects electrical fields with magnetic fields and what happens at very, very cold temperatures. That's all basic research, and we would not have it without government investment. So I'm a big fan of government investment. Lead on.
All right.
Sorry, long-winded, mad.
No. Next question is from Jessica, who is from Montrose, Michigan. And she asks, what should we change about how we teach science now to high school students?
Nothing. No, of course. You want it as hands-on as possible. You want problems and projects rather than just answering stuff in a book. Very easy for Uncle Bill to stand up here and talk about. The other thing, if I were king of the forest, we would pay science teachers as much as we pay software developers. Then you would attract a different kind of teacher that might be more qualified or have more time to spend. I wouldn't be in a hurry to go get another job. Yes?
Next up from Jeff from Bighorn, Wyoming. He asks, why should we spend money exploring other planets when there are so many needs here on Earth?
Oh, Bighorn man. Let the record show I did not plant this question. Space exploration has changed the world. What does it say about you if you say, I'm not going to go exploring, I'm just going to stay home. I don't care what's over the horizon. I'm just going to stay here. Everything will be fine like this. You will get out-competed by the other people who do go explore. What does it say about you if you don't look up and out, if you're not curious? Whatever it is, it's not good. Then, from a scientific yet practical standpoint, what's his, Jeff from Bighorn? Jeff et al. If we were to discover life on another world, it would change this one. It would change this one in the same way Copernicus changed the world when he proved that it's a ball going around the sun, not the other way around. It would change the world in the same way Copernicus changed the world. I mean, when Galileo changed the world. When he observed that the moon isn't quite as perfect circle as you might think. It's full of craters and holes and things. And wait, there's another object with things that orbit it, Jupiter. It would change the world. by the way, if we found life on another world, it would not be made by, that discovery would not be made by an individual. It would be made by a society who thought this was a worthy investment of our intellect and treasure. And did I mention the Planetary Society? Did I bring that up? So at the Planetary Society, we do three things. We educate, check out our website. We have outstanding award-winning journalists. We create, we built a spacecraft, among other things. We work to deflect asteroids. Then we advocate. Oh, by the way, if the Earth got hit with an asteroid, that would really suck. And there is no evidence that the ancient dinosaurs had a space program. If they had, they might have been able to deflect an asteroid. Furthermore, if we were to detect a signal from another civilization, it would change the world. Change the world. And one way to make sure you don't hear that signal is to not listen. So we at the Planetary support search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And by the way, we have the capability to deflect an asteroid. If humankind got together, we could build a spacecraft or a system that could do it. And the Planetary Society is a cool system. Check us out. There are laser bees. But the discovery of life on another world would be made by society. And just to talk all technical with you, the NASA budget is around $18 billion. Almost 80% of that goes to human spaceflight, supporting the International Space Station trips up there, investing in rocket companies like SpaceX, Orbital Sciences. I'm sorry Sierra Nevada didn't make the cut, but Boeing, in building the rockets for the next generation of explorers. But the planetary science budget, where the Curiosity rover comes from, what's called the 2020 rover that will launch in 2020 to go to Mars, that budget is less than $1.5 billion. The NASA budget is 0.4% of the federal budget. Planetary science is 9% of that. So 0.036% of the federal budget goes to looking for life on another world. That is a worthy investment, my friends. If we were to discover life on Mars, does it have DNA? You know, it is not crazy. It's extraordinary, but not crazy to suggest that life started on Mars. And Mars was hit with an impactor about 3 billion years ago, through a hole, except it's in outer space, there's no sound. Came to Earth in about 17,000 years through a mathematic thing they call a Hohmann orbit, H-O-H-M-A-N, Hohmann orbit, lands on Earth, and you and I and everybody are descendants of Martians. That is worth pursuing, Jeff from Bighorn. That is worth knowing, let me tell you. That is inspirational. Yeah. Yes.
Blair from Buffalo, New York, would like to know, what is the most important thing that we can do in our personal lives to help save the planet?
Great question, Blair. Talk about climate change. Just talk about it. If we were talking about climate change the way we're talking about what went on in Ferguson, Missouri, if we were talking about climate change the way we're talking about dealing with these thugs on the other side of the world, if we were talking about climate change the way we talk about politicians' outside interests, in the same way if we were talking about climate change the way we talk about those other things, we would have awareness and we would get started. And my claim is, I've been to these international meetings, the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Kyoto Protocol, there was a big thing in The Hague in the Netherlands, and it gets into this thing, well, we're not going to cut emissions in the United States unless India stopped burning natural gas. I can't believe the president shook hands with the president of China and did a thing. If the United States were leading, were out in front, none of that stuff would be happening. Just be irrelevant. If the United States were out in front on climate change, everybody would be on board. We'd get it done. So Blair, it sounds silly, but just talk about climate change all the time. all this snow in Boston, which you may have heard about, I mean, it's charming and we can make fun of it because you're Minnesotans, snow, ha ha ha. But the economic effect of shutting down that huge metropolitan center for a month is huge. And you get the sea surface just a little warmer, just who's from Buffalo? Somebody's from Buffalo? Get the lakes just a little warmer, then it snows a lot more than it used to. And last year I was in Milwaukee, I was in Cleveland, I was here. When you get Green Bay Packer fans bitching about how cold it is, something's wrong. I mean, I don't know. And so bear in mind that those swings in weather, the up and down, is consistent with climate change models. Yes.
All right. And
Talk
this one,
about it.
in fact, is related to that, and it's from John, who is from Denver, Colorado. So
Right on.
he's John Denver.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is related to that, actually. Why do you believe that so many otherwise well-informed people, not climate change deniers, ordinary people, still do not believe in climate change?
It's just I think the problem is just too hard to imagine. How could humans, like if you're from Albert Lee, anybody? If you're from wheat country, it just seems impossible. How could I, my neighbors a mile away or a couple kilometers away, how could we possibly change the climate of the Earth? It just seems unimaginable. But when you go to other places, if you go to Bangkok or Hyderabad, India or someplace, people are just like this. You can get a sense that humans could be changing things. And as we say, whether or not you believe in certain aspects of science, they're true anyway. And so climate change has been proven, has been shown to be caused by humans by a very reasonable reckoning to a slightly higher level of reliability or veracity than the connection between cigarettes and cancer. And so that connection's been pretty well shown. And so is it with humans and climate change. So just talk about it. Just talk about it. Remind everybody that extreme weather events, extreme heat especially, is tied to climate change. And here in Minneapolis, steadily over the last 200 years, it's gotten warmer and warmer. Some of that because there's more people living here, but most of it is because the world has more carbon dioxide than it used to. It's holding in more heat. I don't make the rules, okay? It's just how it is. Yes, lead on.
I'm sorry to say
that's
that is
it?
all the time we
Oh,
have.
wow. Thank you all
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bill Nye, everybody.
I love
Mr.
you
Bill
guys.
Nye.
Happy Valentine's Day. I love you. Thank you for coming. Woo! Celebrate science. Oh, I love you. Look at that. Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Science rules.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Inertia is a property of matter.